Welcome to Managing Through Crisis, the webcast featuring faculty from Harvard Business School sharing insights for managers on how to navigate through the COVID-19 crisis. On February 2nd of this year, 52 brands spent an average of $7.7 million to strut their stuff on the annual advertising extravaganza known as the Super Bowl. Oh, and there was a football game too. It's a big day for those brands as it often sets the stage for advertising and promotion for the rest of the year. Little did we know on that day that within weeks, those plans would be erased by COVID-19. Chief marketing officers everywhere find themselves in uncharted waters. So today I'm really happy to have two guests who can help us navigate through these rough seas. They recently co-wrote an article called "What Customers Need to Hear from You During the COVID-19 Crisis." Jill Avery is an expert on brand management who teaches in the MBA program at Harvard Business School. Richard Edelman is the CEO of the PR firm Edelman Worldwide. And every year they publish a report called the annual Edelman Trust Barometer. It's a fantastic report, and we're going to talk about that today. But let me thank both of you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Brian.
So we're all separate. We're practicing social distancing. We're here from different places in the country. Richard, I want to start with you. I mentioned the Edelman Trust Barometer. It's something that we refer to at Harvard Business School every year because I think the information that you provide in there gives us a real way to gauge what people are thinking about government, media, and business institutions. But you've just done a little bit of an off-cycle version of this, and I want you to maybe describe for us what the research was that you did and how it feeds the topic that we're going to talk about today.
I think the big message for marketers is that your customers want to hear from you. Don't do a blackout. Tell them what you're doing to solve the problem and not sell to them. Have a mentality that is suitably serious. Don't be too much around comic relief, and be substantive. Give them something tangible that you're doing, whether it's cutting rates or allowing health workers to jump the line, or having a idea that's even bigger, like the Hawaii tourism, where they have this feeling of aloha. They did a video and said, hey, we're all thinking of you. We'll be back together soon. The aloha spirit. But communicate, because now's the time people need to feel the empathy of brands.
Richard, I'm just curious, what were the numbers of the folks that you surveyed? How did you go about executing?
So we went out to a dozen markets. We did 12,000 people, some in Asia, some in Europe, some in the States, some in Latin America. And the amazing thing was the unanimity of feeling of the respondents, young and old, and across all of the geographies. They really actually believe deeply in brands. They have this sense that brands are standing for them today. They have the idea of brand democracy, that I'm voting by buying your product. And I'll support you, candidate brand, if in fact you do what I expect, which is stand up for me at this really tough time.
Jill, before coming to HBS, you were at the fore of some pretty big brands, probably some Super Bowl advertisers, I would venture to guess. And I'm wondering, how big of an impact is this on a CMO when something like, we don't really have a precedent per se. I don't know, maybe 9/11, some people have said that, but how does a CMO pivot in a time like this?
Yeah, this is a very scary time for chief marketing officers, Brian. And what precipitated our study is that we noticed that nearly a quarter of brands had gone dark as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. So CMOs were struggling with, what do I do? What do I say? How do I act during a crisis like this? I'm not sure we have a precedent in history for this. And I think that's why you saw so many managers choosing to go dark rather than experimenting with solutions to address the crisis. So we fielded this survey the week of March 23rd, which, if you go back in your memory, was as the crisis was unfolding across the world. So some of the markets that we surveyed, consumers were well into weeks of having the virus in their country. Whereas in other parts of the world where we surveyed, the virus was just emerging or threatening to come into a country. So managers all over the world were at different places during that week and trying to understand how consumers would respond to this very unique, unprecedented event.
What kind of an impact do you think this has on the advertising industry? Maybe, Richard, that might be a question that you're closer to. How is it impacting the media world?
Well, what's happened is that all sorts of brands have decided to stop putting their content next to disturbing news. And that's not unusual. But if most of the news is disturbing, that means basically they're opting out. And so actually advertising in television in the third quarter could be down as much as 40%. And so it's having a tidal wave on the advertising and marketing business. Specifically, WPP applied for 600 million sterling of government support yesterday, and the stock price of WPP is down by half. And the requests for layoffs or furloughs or senior salary cuts is just sweeping the industry. So it's definitely having an effect. But what I would say is it's urgent that it's remembered. Everybody knows where you were on 2001, 9/11, and the same will be for brands. If you stand up and speak up for your brands right now, you will have a disproportionate impact because the others are being silent. And if it's functional, like Dove, to wash your hands more often and for 20 seconds, that's the new rule. You have to do tops and bottoms and in between the fingers. Or if it's for HP donating digital printers to hospitals where they don't have enough masks and they can make their own. That's the sort of responsibility people will remember.
So Jill, let me ask you about this, because you and I have talked before about brand storytelling and how important that is. And I'm wondering, there are some brands who are lighthearted and frivolous, and that's kind of like their brand personality, right? If you're a brand like that, what can you do to sort of adapt to this and still be authentic and true to yourself?
So I think two messages here. One is you have to be present during this moment. So even though so many CMOs are pulling back, this is not the moment to go dark. And whether it's in digital media or traditional media, you're seeing consumers hunger for information about this crisis. So consumers are consuming more media during this time period, and they want to hear directly from their brands. So when we think about brand storytelling during this time, consumers want information. They want facts about the virus. They want to understand how your products and services can help them weather this crisis. And they want to make sure that you're delivering news that is factual. There's a lot of rumor and fake news going around, and consumers are really looking to brands to be truthful, upfront, and well-informed and educated about the crisis. Our survey results indicate that marketers might want to be cautious about the use of humor or being too lighthearted during the crisis. Consumers indicated that they want all advertisers to recognize that we're in a crisis, to empathize with consumers' conditions, to show that they understand what people are going through, that they're not ignoring or oblivious to the state of the world. So we would caution marketers right now to avoid being frivolous, to watch the use of humor. The other theme that came up is escapism. Should we be creating brand stories that allow consumers to escape this period, which is very, very scary, both from a health standpoint, a social distancing standpoint, and economic pain. Our survey results indicate that might be a risky strategy right now, especially for countries that are in the heart of the crisis. Perhaps as more weeks go on, escapism in advertising might be more palatable, but in the heart of the crisis, consumers really want to see how you're helping and how you're providing solutions that are going to help them through this moment.
Brian, so sorry, Jill. Sorry. There's one thing that is amazing, how fast a lie gets around the world in a time of panic. And so there was some report from an unidentified UN official in Malaysia saying that If you had cold products like ice cream, it opened your throat up for COVID. And all of a sudden, ice cream sales started to plummet. And we, on behalf of Unilever, said, that is just not so. We had to put doctors up quite quickly, go on social and say, enjoy your ice cream. It's actually not only fun, it's totally safe. But this idea of being ready for fake news is so important right now because it's just getting up and around so quickly.
Richard, is this a time that you would advise CEOs to step forward? I mean, do we want to hear from CEOs now? Is it important to have their voice register?
So, Brian, we're about to put out another special Edelman report next Tuesday. And here's what I'd say. At the moment, CEOs have kept their heads down. They've sort of been the passenger in the car and letting government be the driver. And when return to work happens, they can't do that anymore. And business is going to have to be the responsible and stage return to work in such a way that people feel it's different. Starbucks, for example, opening its stores by having no one sit, just getting served and leaving, and staging the line such that no one's too close. And all of these things are signals that business has thought through that the thing that matters the most is safety of their people and of their customers, not the money. And that's urgent. And so CEOs, to the point, should be speaking up now. They've had their 3 months of quiet. Now they need to stand up and speak up on behalf of what's the new society that we can expect. And don't pine for the old. Tell us what the new normal is going to be.
Jill, are there examples of firms? I know naming names is always dicey, in our business, but are there examples that you can point to where somebody has really adopted a tone that captures, what you're describing as the right tone for this time?
Sure. I think I'll point to some of the efforts that we've seen coming out of Unilever, because they have been one of the companies that I think have taken a total 360 view of how to communicate during this crisis. First, there's a very powerful ad out there right now that is entitled "Courage is Beautiful," and it features frontline health workers with their tired, haggard, and hardworking faces marked and scarred by the masks that they're wearing as they're caring for COVID-19 patients. It's part of the Dove campaign for Real Beauty, which has been a long-running, very successful campaign for Unilever. And it perfectly matches the essence of the brand and the message that everyone is beautiful with a new version of beauty and a new version of courage and heroism during the COVID-19 crisis. I think it strikes a perfect emotional balance and message for the times. But Unilever is not just advertising. They're not just telling nice stories during this time period. They're actually putting action behind the words. And so I think what makes Dove and their other brands' campaigns more powerful right now is the fact that Unilever has dedicated 100 million euros in soaps and bleach and other food products to help with the crisis. They've pledged 200 million euros to help their small suppliers and small retailers weather the crisis. And they promised to protect their employees for 3 months as the economic situation changes. So here you see a firm that's helping its employees, helping its suppliers, providing emotional connections for viewers, and then also adding to it with videos on proper hand washing techniques using Dove soap on YouTube. So kind of a 360 view of being informational, providing help to not just their own customers, but to people around the world, and really standing behind their brand values.
That's a great example. And Richard, I guess I would ask you then, sort of as a follow-on to that, do consumers want their brands to be part of the solution here? How important is it to consumers that brands actually step up and try to do something proactive to be part of the solution?
It's the sine qua non. They are absolutely convinced that brands are the leading edge of the spear in solving. In fact, they actually want brands to protect the jobs of employees. They want brands to lower prices for people who are affected adversely by all of this. They have just this sense that the brand is the corporation in a way, and because that's what they can buy. They can't buy the corporation, and the brand also shouldn't be selling. The brand should be solving and be part of a fabric. In fact, maybe partnering with government or partnering with NGOs because we're better together. You know, Unilever, for example, is doing a day of service in the United States where they're giving away all the products made in their 14 factories on one day in May. They're distributing through Feeding America and Direct Relief, and that's smart because it gives them the ability to also reach their employees and their communities. It's not just the customers.
So stay with you for a second on this, Richard, because I think there are some brands, that, particularly in the meatpacking industry right now, where we've seen, high incidences of the virus. Those plants are, many of them are under shutdown. And so you've got a brand like Tyson, let's say, who finds itself in a really difficult spot because either they care about their employees and they stay shut down until they can do the deep cleaning they need to do, or they care about the public and they stay open so that they can, avoid some disruption to the food chain. What kind of a trade-off do you have to make there as a brand?
Well, it's our client, so I know something about this, and in fact, I don't think it
I
has
didn't know that, by the way, when I asked the questions.
It's
That's
okay,
just
it's
a
okay.
gratuitous.
It's fine, it's fine. They actually don't need to make a trade-off. What they need to be able to do is demonstrate that they've actually changed the production method. They have put plastics between each of the workstations. They have monitored the employees coming in with temperature. They have made efforts to help the community, not just their own workers, get to a better health place. And it is urgent on the food supply, as to have people be able to do this vital work. And so Tyson is all of a sudden become a healthcare company. And I think that's the thing that's changed for industry. You're not just a meat company, you have to care more broadly about your environment so that you can do your job.
So, Jill, I know Richard said that this is a time for brands to be solving and not selling, but I have to ask, is there an opportunity for brands here to grow mind share and eventually, to grow their consumer base based on how they behave during this time?
I think there's a huge opportunity, but I also think there's a huge risk. And what we're hearing from consumers is they will reward companies who act honorably to help during this crisis. They expect their brands that they've trusted for many years to step up and be a safety net during this time period, to help governments, to help nonprofit organizations get us through this. They're expecting brands and the companies behind them to help even when they incur significant financial losses. So relationships are formed and strengthened or destroyed in moments of crisis. So I think consumers are watching right now and will reward brands who do this well. They also, unfortunately, are indicating that they will punish brands who fail, who sell rather than provide solutions, who take advantage of the situation rather than being compassionate in this moment. They will punish brands who don't take care of their employees or who leave people behind during this moment of crisis. So, I think if we're managing brands, it's a tremendous opportunity to increase trust, to secure loyalty, and to be there alongside our customers. But it's also a risk for those who strike the wrong tone or don't step up to be a helping partner.
So I've got one more question left. I want you to both have an opportunity to respond to it. Richard, I'll start with you. The question is, how should CMOs be thinking about the restart? This will come to an end at some point. And how do CMOs need to think about, their role in bringing their brands back to the surface?
So I would hope that CMOs don't look at this as the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another, because there is some risk that COVID could come back. Business could be blamed for not being sufficiently cautious and protecting us. And so I think it's, in a way, the beginning of the next phase for marketing. I think people are tired of being talked at. I think they want to be communicated with. I think there's a sense that this is beyond purpose. This is not a nice to do. This is, how are our brands going to fit into society that needs to be recreated and be somehow, in a way, good for everybody. One of the great changes here, Brian, is we have 30 million people unemployed in the United States. This wave of COVID has caused an economic catastrophe. And 50% of Hispanics at the moment are either unemployed or have had their wages or hours diminished. And so, we have to really think as marketers, how are we going to have products that suit the people who are out of work? They're not poor, they're disadvantaged now. And we need to give them hope, and we need to give them a sense of we care, and that we're designing smaller products or affordable products. It's a rethink, not just of safety in where you sit in the restaurant, but how I price this and how I market this and how I'm going to let people talk to each other, and in a way maybe be less controlling on our message. That in fact the brand is willing to be a community and really stand for the best.
Jill?
So I would caution brands about returning to their pre-COVID messaging and their pre-COVID strategy, because I think the best brand storytelling always springs when we stay close to the human condition. Culture has fundamentally changed, and people have different needs today than they did back in February of 2020. And smart marketers will tap into the new needs and the emerging needs of consumers as society begins to open up. Health, safety are going to be big themes well into the fall, winter, and possibly into 2021. And so how brands can adapt their storytelling to reflect the new needs of consumers, to respect the position that consumers are in, both economically, psychologically, and socially, and reflect that in their stories, is going to lead to a reopening in a new normal that needs new stories from brands, not the stories we've been telling in the pre-COVID era.
Jill Avery, Richard Edelman, thank you so much for these insights. It's been great talking with you today.
Thank you so much.